I've never seen Frozen.
There we go.
I just wanted to mention.
Let it go.
Yep.
Carl, let it go.
Most unlikely of villains, schools of blame and for pause. Does it talk? Does it know how? Does it bottle? Does it meow? Let on the cerebral bore. Ever show him so much more? Release your brains at the
Welcome back to Cerebrivore. This is a bonus podcast. We're going to answer listener calls today. On the panel, I have BJ of the Arcane Alienist and Carl of the Gemologist Presents. I, as always, am Jason of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. The first call up is Colin Green of the Spike Pit podcast and YouTube channel. The Anchor app that he used to send the message seemed to have garbled his message a little bit. So just kind of suffer through that, and then the audio picks up after that call. I do want to say that we're maybe a little bit low energy because we recorded this a little bit late, but we have some great calls. I hope you hang around and listen to them all. I also hope that you reach out to us and join the fun. If you want to leave a comment for us, you can use the Anchor app on your phone. You can follow the link in the show notes to our Anchor website, and you can leave a message for us there. You can also send us an email at cerebrivore@gmail.com. If you attach an audio file, we'll play it on the air and make you famous. Or if you just send an email, we'll read that out and respond to it. You can also leave comments in the YouTube videos comment section. So without further ado, let's get into that phone call.
Well, I don't know how this message is going to come out, guys, but awesome job on the first episode. Let's see if Spotify can do as awesome a job with recording this message. Never easy to get 4 people together and do a collaboration like that. I would like to thank you for the shout out to the whole purple worm as well. A great topic, this idea of shared worlds. I've forgotten the setting, so I can really share a few ideas, and I think you covered the main problems, and especially it was super fired up, so I'll be watching this space. I look forward to learning more. Take care, guys. I'll catch up. And another thing, gentlemen, I can't get you on favourites on Anchor. I don't know how their search engine is so bad, and I know we've moaned about it before, but I can figure out no way of favouring you so that I can do my messages through Anchor instead of Spotify. Get my teeth in there.
The good thing is the Anchor problem has been fixed. You can now find Cerebrivore by searching on Anchor. So we have fixed that. As far as in Carl's message, Anchor kind of goobered it up there. It sounds like he turns into a Decepticon for a minute there at the end.
Yeah, I guess Spotify didn't do a very good job of delivering the message.
Well, yeah, it didn't like him talking. Didn't like you talking bad things about it there, Colin. But thank you for the kind words. We really appreciate it. We would never consider ourselves the equal of, like Purple Worm, but Purple Worm was definitely an inspiration for this podcast, I think.
Yep, for sure. Thank you, Colin. And I guess for me, I never really used the search function in Anchor. I just listen to the podcast and hit favorite while the podcast is playing. So maybe that could work for you if you cannot find it. So I agree, the search engine is kind of bad. And as far as the shared world goes, I think now with this excitement, maybe it's excitement with the Marvel Universe playtest coming out. I think we might be leaning to like a shared universe, a shared like comic book universe, whether it's Marvel or Champions or other, because it seems like it would work pretty well. I mean, I know BJ has mentioned, you'll probably repeat it or talk about it. That's kind of what comic books do, is like all these authors have a shared universe. So maybe that might be an option to pursue the shared verse. And thank you, Colin, for those words.
Yeah. I found when Anchor is just going to be completely uncooperative and not help you find a podcast is there. I go to Google and I Google the name of the podcast. And then if I do it on my phone, if you open an Anchor podcast in a web browser on my phone, it then says, do you want to open this in the Anchor app? And I'd say yes. And then I can favorite. And then once it's on my favorites list, I can find it to send people messages. That's a really convoluted way of doing it, but it works.
Yeah. Well, like I said, luckily it is fixed now, but we definitely appreciate the feedback. The next couple calls, and actually the next 5 calls or 5 minutes of calls, are from Daniel Norton at Bandits Keep Media Empire. So we're going to play those, and then after we talk about Daniel's calls, we have one final set of calls from Joe Salvador. So I'm going to play Daniel's calls now.
Hey guys, Daniel from Bandits Keep calling in. Very excited about this new podcast endeavor. So first episode, I left a message on YouTube already, just a comment, but immediately I was thinking of something like this. So great minds think alike, I guess, Joe. And because I had read Lovecraft's Polaris, where it's kind of unclear which is actually the real person. Basically the narrator isn't sure, right, whether they are dreaming or whether their dream is the dream, if that makes sense, if you've read the story. So I thought that would be super interesting. And I had the OD&D supplement Carcosa, and I thought it'd be really cool because in that there's like only a couple of classes and like all strange beings. And I thought it'd be cool to actually have player characters who go between the multiple worlds. And the way I was going to do it was actually similar to what you guys are talking about, this cyberpunk idea. Effectively, you keep the same mental stats for the most part, and you'd be the same person, but you'd have a different body. So, and also a different skill set. Like I feel like you'd pick up a skill set just because you went into that body. So a little bit like Quantum Leap. So kind of like if you wanted to play a thief, let's say in one system, you would get those thief skills when you're in that system, but your mind would be the same, maybe not exactly stats wise, but they'd be the same as far as you remember everything, if that makes sense. So that was kind of my idea. But more so as you were talking though, I was thinking of the first Dying Earth book, where the stories seem to take place all over the Dying Earth, of course, and there's various levels of technology and various levels of civilization. And I think you could very easily use Joe's idea of multiple GMs in the same world, but have the worlds or the civilizations that use the different systems just be separated, right? So you could use, let's say, Starfinder. Actually, I don't know, maybe that's space exploration, but something where it's like more futuristic, but you're earthbound in one continent, and then another continent could be like, a prehistoric man level of technology, and then you might have like steampunk on another continent, and maybe they never interact. So, but everybody can use every one, and maybe sometimes player characters jump back and forth, possibly using portals or maybe long journeys. Maybe, the space people or the more high-tech people make an airplane or they use a helicopter or something. Imagine a helicopter flying over some immense mountain range, and crashing, and then the characters climb down the other side and find themselves in the world of medieval fantasy. So yeah, definitely super inspirational, your talks. I appreciate you guys putting this information out there. I was thinking though, just to go all the way back to the beginning, that when we were kids, that's what we did. We all played in the same world. Every dungeon master ran whatever they were going to run, and people just brought their characters back and forth. Sometimes we'd even play with like groups of friends that we all didn't know. And yeah, we just all kind of trusted each other, I guess. Yes, it does create a little bit more of a gonzo situation. And yes, we did end up with some kind of weird magic items sometimes things that were supposed to be unique we had 2 of. But it's a game, right? So I guess it all depends on how serious you want to take it and how far you want to push it. But I think the idea is great, and I think you really could meld the worlds together either via virtual or mental transmission, or literally just on the same planet, but just have very difficult to travel between the various areas.
Okay, his last call is on a different topic, so I'll let you guys comment on that. What he's talking about, the world, maybe a world with, the different civilizations separate in different tech levels, separated by distance. Pathfinder kind of does that, doesn't it, to some degree, Carl or BJ? Are you guys more familiar with Pathfinder? I know we don't have Joe here with us at the moment.
I would say there's different regions in genre, but that could work too, right? Like you have, there is like a prehistoric type of area up north, and then there's nearby. There's like this Sword and Planet type of area where a spaceship crashed. There's an area that makes gunpowder, right? There's the African ortholog and a whole lot of different there's even like a French Revolution ortholog. So you can play in different genres and in different places. And I think that's maybe that's the philosophy for Pathfinder societies. Like you're all working for different factions and traveling all over the place, and your home base is the big central city of Absalom, which would be like water deep in the Forgotten Realms. And you just, that could be an idea. That's probably how Pathfinder Society works. And people like Living Greyhawk or other past organized play things would do that, would bring their characters to different places. And I would have like, I know we're not to harken to that. That's kind of, I agree. That's what we did. When we had the sort of D&D club and in junior high or whatever, we just bring your character and you play in someone's verse, or they would play in your verse. And it was generally either Greyhawk, or once Ed Greenwood came out with the first edition Forgotten Realms, that's what we played in. I didn't have a lot of friends who did like homebrew stuff, but that was there occasionally too. So yeah, you could bring your characters wherever. And I think I like the idea of I don't have the Carcosa product, but now I'm very intrigued, Daniel. So thank you for that call to go check that out. But that could be a cool thing too. And I think I kind of had an idea to do that with our GCC. Maybe I'm spoiling it for Jason and BJ, because I have this idea that there's portals that link, in this 3-body solar system, Fomalhaut, which really exists. And I think the players haven't put together all these manifestations, but I mean, it's not a shared world, though. I guess it could be. We all like DCC, but that is a great idea, and maybe going to Carcosa and see how that works out might be a cool thing to do. I know the last thing, the cyberpunk that you mentioned, is Onyx Publishing has just come out with something called Anima, which is like a build on the Trinity Continuum, and Anima is supposed to be this idea where you kind of jack in and you go to a world in your virtual reality, but then there's a real reality outside of that, and then there's machinations in both inside the virtual world and outside. So kind of, I guess, like Snow Crash by Neil Stevenson, I guess, would be something like that too, right? So yeah, thanks for those calls, Daniel.
So real quick, and I'll throw this to BJ. As far as Carcosa goes, Daniel, maybe call us back, let us know which Carcosa you're thinking. So there's 2 Carcosa products out there. There's one by, I don't know if it's Jeffrey or Joffrey, because it's spelled with the GE, but McKinney, I believe, is his name. And he put it out for OD&D or BX. And that came out maybe 20 years ago now. This was back in the G Plus days. And he came out with this Carcosa supplement. And it was OD&D because it was like branded. I mean, he did it. It wasn't TSR approved, but it's like, supplement number 9 or something, is what he put on there, to follow with the original OD&D supplements. And it caught a lot of stuff, because there's like human sacrifice. You have like red Martians and blue Martians and green Martians and yellow Martians on there, right? And there's human sacrifice, or Martian sacrifice, I guess. But there's effectively human sacrifice and stuff like that. And it's a really dark world. And it's basically a big hex crawl. And you could play as individuals from there, but the idea is your party is, transported to Carcosa and you're exploring it. So there's that. And then the Lamentations of Flame Princes have a Carcosa product as well. That's a distinct product from that one, from that original one. So I don't know which one Daniel was talking about. I've never read the Lamentations one. I've got it, but I haven't read it. I bought their PDF package a while back where you get all their stuff. So I've got all their stuff, but I haven't looked through it. So I don't know. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that with Carcosa. There are a couple different distinct Carcosa products out there on the market. And any other thoughts on Daniel's call?
Well, I think you're talking about the Pathfinder world. Eberron can do that as well. Eberron gives you this kind of mage punk feeling in the main central setting on the continent of Corvair, but you start to get out in the hinterlands and it gets back to more kind of rural medieval fantasy style stuff. They also have a kind of a lost continent analog, Zendrick, where you can do like Alan Quatermain and Indiana Jones style adventures, or that could just be, the whole point of Eberron is for it to be pulp fantasy, and that it emulates a lot of stuff from the 30s and 40s, classic films and pulp fiction and things like that. But using magic in place of technology, but it also allows that various looks where there are still places where, there's like a person in a castle and the forest is full of goblins, and it's kind of a, vanilla D&D, but then you get these other kind of idea, things that have very different feel depending on the type of, magic you want to make available on where you're located in the world. But Mystara was that way as well back in Beckme, particularly later on. I mean, the core of Mystara, the known world, was sort of just kind of D&D, but they had the Hollow Earth. But then you get over into the western part when they got into the Red Steel, where they started to sort of push it towards second edition rather than Beckme. Although I think Red Steel was still Beckme, but you've got much more of a Three Musketeers, the Man in the Iron Mask kind of feel. And they put this plague in place that everybody that lives in this part of the world keeps them from being able to travel away. So they put it's kind of a little bit ham-fisted, but they put a magical reason as to why these two parts of the world rarely interact. So Mystara had a lot of variation, and even within the core Mystara setting, depending on where you went, you had like a Viking setting and a Mongol setting and a setting that kind of echoed Transylvania. So there was I think a lot of D&D allows for that just within one system, depending on how you set up the different regions of the world. But I think that's getting a little different from our original premise of, here's a cyberpunk setting and a sci-fi setting and a fantasy setting and a old West setting. And how do you go between them? After I re-listened to the episode, something I thought about it. I don't know if you guys have ever read the cross-gen comics. They were kind of a flash in the pan. They're these really high quality comics, but the company collapsed after a few years. This is back in the late 90s, early aughts. But the central premise was they did everything. They were going to do everything except superheroes. So they had one comic that was space opera. And they had one comic that was sort of a Tolkien-like fantasy, and they had one comic where it was more of a kind of a jazz age, Gilded Age kind of setting, all with the kind of fantasy elements. And the idea was this mysterious being was kind of implied to be sort of the creator of the universe, was upset with the gods, and so he began to depower the gods, and he selected a mortal on every world. They have this mysterious sigil show up somewhere on their body that grants them supernatural powers. But you got to see how you would play with that same theme in a medieval setting versus a Western setting versus the best one was Ruse. It was a Sherlock Holmes homage, where the Sherlock Holmes character winds up with this sigil that gives him this ability to he's even more perceptive and more intelligent. But you could do something like that, something links, some deity or some overlord or some overmind has said, I'm running out of an experiment or a theme or exploring an idea or a concept, or I'm trying to find the best hero from each of these settings, and then we can pull them together and they can hop back and forth. That's a little more of a high level than you might want to start in D&D, but I think there are lots of ways you could set this up, with whether it's portal hopping or different corners of the same world, or like a Spelljammer kind of setting where you can just go to different planets that have different levels of technology or magic or power or whatever the case may be.
Definitely. And I think definitely we've kind of talked about this before. We're going to definitely revisit the idea of shared campaigns and shared universes in a future episode of the show as well.
Just do Trek and say we've got a Star Trek, we've got a moral quandary. We want to help these people, but we can't break the Prime Directive, so we have to go in disguise.
Yeah, you could do it that way too. That'd be kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Or something I've always wanted to do is like kind of inspired by I think Gav Thorpe's Space Wolves stuff for Warhammer Fantasy is like, the Space Wolves live on a very brutal death world that's like very Viking-esque. And then they, the tribes don't really know until they're chosen by the spacemen, right? So that'd be kind of fun to do too. And I think there's a few other chapters who are like that. There's a very primitive death world, and then the spacemen come and take the best warriors, right? So that'd be I'd love to spring it, but I think too many of my friends and players they'd get the hint at some point, like, oh, okay, I think I know what we're doing now. But then you could actually start like D&D and then switch games to like the all the different the old Fantasy Flight, which I have the whole collection of the whole like Fantasy Flight Death Watch or whatever, which would be kind of neat. We could actually get into what we had talked about in that podcast of switching even play systems, right? You just
right.
So.
Yeah, just convert the base idea of the character over to the new system. Yeah, definitely.
It's kind of a tangent, but you mentioned the Space Wolves, and I just remember a few months ago when we watched Dune, and the Sardaukar first show up, and I'm like looking at my son, I'm like, you realize those are Space Marines, right?
Yeah. I am assuredly GW took inspiration from Dune, right? For some of that stuff. Yeah, for sure. I mean, Dune and the Foundation have a lot of touch points. I guess that's another future podcast.
So,
but Daniel, your calls have inspired all this talk. So thank you.
Oh, definitely, very much so. And like I say, we are definitely going to have a future another panel discussion about these kind of things.
We need to get Daniel on a panel.
Yeah, we'll reach out to him and see if he wants to be on that one. But we have one more call from Daniel, and it's about the unboxing episode that Carl and I and so I'm going to play that now.
So I wouldn't feel like a proper Daniel Colin if I only called in at the end of an entire episode. So I started episode 2 with the unboxing, and lots of cool stuff for unboxing. I love that you're a completionist. I've also become that. I'm trying not to be, but it's super fun. And that now I don't know what it was called, the supplement that was Insect Psychics or something. That sounds amazingly epic, and I feel like I want to go look for that just to use in other games. So I'm going to listen to see what else you guys open. Arlen has just joined.
Yeah, unfortunately, Arlen didn't open any of his parents' mail. Not unfortunately, but we tried to get him to do that.
Fortunately.
Yeah, fortunately, yes. Let me say that, because we tried. He wanted to break the law there, and we had to stop him. Carl and I had to be the voice of reason. But yeah, that was a supplement for that. I'll look for that. But thank you. Yeah, I definitely am a completionist, Daniel. When I get into something, like I now have everything leading edge games have ever published, except I don't have all their miniatures. I've got everything Chaosium's done for Stormbringer now. Well, that's not true. I only have the first edition box set, so I need to buy the core rules for second, third, and fourth edition Stormbringer, but I've got all the modules and all that stuff. I've got all the White Wolf Street Fighter stuff now, Carl. I've finished the collection as well. But do you guys find that are you able to avoid being a completionist? Can you resist buying everything?
I think I have like a price point. Like I've been trying to complete my collection of Twilight 2000 first edition modules because they're really good, and I have all the PDFs because I did, and they're legal because I bought it from Mark Miller, and I guess it's FF. I don't know what they're called, what his company's called now, but they sell these like thumb drives with all the Traveler stuff, all the Twilight 2000 stuff, right? All the old GDW products. I think you probably get all the conspiracy stuff, Jason, if you wanted to that way as a PDF. But I like the physical products. So I've been, I got the box set for a reasonable price, and I've gotten a lot of the modules at a reasonable price and in good shape. But there's some that I just don't want to pay that much. Like for some reason, like the Last Submarine trilogy, like all the modules are like $60. I'm not going to pay $60 for, a very thin. But I did find fortunately, there's only 2 products for Ringworld, so I bought those 2. Yeah. I definitely want to be a completionist, and even in some more modern games, I'm really irritated at how long it's taken to get all the, from Modiphius to get all the Conan books in print, because I did the Kickstarter with all the PDFs, and I picked a few, but now I'm like, I want to get all the Conan books, and they've been slow to get them. And I'd rather, I'm just waiting because it's not a priority. I'm just waiting until Dragon's Lair here in San Antonio gets them all. So I just buy them from them. But same thing with Infinity, right? I did all PDFs all in, and I am a completionist, and it's kind of scary. I actually still have all the Al Qadim stuff, so maybe that's kind of a cool completion.
Yeah, BJ, are you a completionist? Can you resist?
Yeah, but begrudgingly. I am a completionist. I was just saying, and it sounds flippant to say, but before I had a kid, I had more disposable income, so it was easy to just I'll just get all of it. Maybe not all at once, but I could pretty easily if there was some sort of book series or something I wanted, I could do that. But now the hard part is I've now got a kid who is himself a completionist. So anything he gets into, he wants the whole set and the whole. But I've kind of learned to be able to walk away at a certain price point.
Well, so Daniel, you had asked about the supplement. So that was for a game called Don't Look Back, Terror is Never Far Behind, a horror RPG. And the supplement, Daniel, is called Giant Psychic Insects from Outer Space. And it's out there. It's cheap. In fact, if you go to Noble Knight, which is one of my favorite places to go for out-of-print products, they have copies of it for $5, $5.50, and $6.50. Mm-hmm. The $6.50 is near mint. So, Daniel, if you want Giant Psychic Insects from Outer Space, Noble Knight is your friend.
I will tell you one thing that bothers the completionist in me. It's projects that get launched through backer funding, who do backer exclusives and never make them available again. I understand wanting to reward your backers, but it's like, oh man, I missed that Kickstarter by 2 days, and that one miniature or that one supplement or that one now there's no way to get it unless I want to go on eBay and get gouged for 10 times over what it's probably really worth. So I have this sort of love-hate relationship with that because I've benefited from that when I've gotten in on the ground floor stuff before, but it does bother me that you never get a second shot at the backer exclusive content or retailer exclusive content that's a limited run. Like I know I backed Hero Quest. I did a show on that, unboxing it, and I got all the ground floor stuff. Well, then very quickly after it started to hit the retail market, they did a special incentive for 2 additional figures, and I think they greatly miscalculated the demand for it. So like 2/3 of the people or something that pre-ordered it, I'm making that number up, a bunch of the people that pre-ordered it couldn't get it. They couldn't keep up with the demand. But unfortunately, places like GameStop and Best Buy took the pre-orders and then didn't inform you until way later that they weren't going to be able to fulfill it. So now the only way to do it is, it's a $15 supplement that is going for like $500 on eBay. And I'm like, well, come on, Hasbro.
Yeah.
Do another print run for the collectors. Yeah, particularly for those of us that backed your original project and got the game relaunched.
Right. That's definitely an issue with Kickstarters with some of the stretch goals and the back earning rewards and early bird stuff. Sometimes they'll have something and especially if it affects gameplay, right? If it's now I get where you're coming from, and I'm not so far completionist that I have to have every minute, like if they do alternate gender minis, have every single one or whatever. And if it's something like that, it's not a big deal, or a different cover or something like that. But sometimes that like a scenario where it's something that actually affects gameplay and you can't get it, and you're like, well, you really want that thing that's actually going to matter,
Yeah.
That extra, especially if it's like a board game. If it's an extra scenario for a board game, that's potentially increases the playability of the game.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a big deal. We do have one last set of calls, or 2 calls from Joe Salvador. Of Raven Guy Games. I've not listened to these. So I'm not sure what he's going to say, but let's hear what he has to say.
Joe Uncensored.
Yes, Joe Uncensored.
Hey fellas, it is Joe Salvador from Raven God Games calling in to Cerebravore. Hey man, I'm enjoying the show so far. Just paused it actually to give you a call, listening to your discussion of religions, and BJ mentioned Jackson Crawford. I can't recommend his show, his video, his YouTube show enough. He's really interesting to listen to. If you're into things, Norse, basically. He is a professor of Norse language and literature. He's also published a number of translations that are available on Amazon. And I'm going to call you back, actually, because I have more to say about him. So Jackson Crawford, if you have Audible right now, Jackson Crawford has a lecture on there. It's about 10 or 12 hours about Norse gods and myths, and it's really good. I just listened to it maybe last week. It's available for free right now, I think through May or maybe the beginning of May. So I jump on. If you have it available, I jump on and grab it. Yeah, and then on his channel, I mean, he does a lot of different things, a lot of different discussions. But one of the things that really kind of stuck out to me as super interesting was he got together with another professor of Anglo-Saxon literature, and they had a discussion in their respective languages just to show the similarities between them. It was really neat. Anyway, keep it up. Later.
Well, that's very cool. We will have a link to that. There's a link to his YouTube in that religion episode. I'll repeat it here, and then I'll put a link to that Audible that Joe mentioned. This is coming out on the 22nd of April. So if you listen to this close to when it published, you have about a week. If it does expire in May, I haven't looked for it yet on Audible, but there'll be a link in, when this show publishes for that. That's cool that he called in. Yeah. Now we've had a real good experience, Carl, with Joe doing the religion for his, for his world, his homebrew stuff, for his Reaver game, his upcoming Sword and Sorcery game.
Yes, this is correct. And I don't know if I'm tickled or scared because he did send me a message. I'm thinking now about how Askold and how it affects religion in Reaver after listening to the Cerebrivore episode. So there you go. Maybe there'll be some inspiration in a future gaming product from Cerebrivore, which I think is hella cool. So yeah, it's cool. Like he is, I would say Joe really is. I can't wait for this product to come out because Joe really is very thorough about his world lore and especially the pantheons and how religion works. And I know in the playtest he does a lot of ad hoc because he's still working it out, but it has been pretty cool, I think. So
yeah, well, he's definitely thought all this out. We're playing out concepts and things like that, but he's the basis for all his stuff. He's got in his head, with the, when we did things like we encountered we've talked about it in our episode recap. So you have to go to Nerds RPG Variety Cast and to the Gemologist Presents and listen to those Reaver recaps. But Joe's really dialed in that his world. It's really cool. So, BJ, any thoughts?
I just would reiterate again. Well, I appreciate Joe calling in, but the Jackson Crawford has done. I mean, he's truly is a lingual scholar. He's kind of gone back to all the original texts and done a new translations of the Prosetta and the Poetic Edda. He makes a lot of comments on kind of the correct way to pronounce some of these terms that we don't without Anglicanizing the pronunciation. So, in fact, I think the way I first found his channel was I was watching a Matt Colville video and he was talking about Dwergar and he's like, yeah, and I learned it's pronounced Dwergar, not Duergar from Jackson Crawford. You guys should go check out his channel. So he does a lot of stuff on how you pronounce Old Norse as opposed to Icelandic Norse, which is what we have today. And so I'm gonna have to go check out his lecture. That sounds like a lot of fun. But he did how he kind of first got into just out of the academic world was he was hired by Disney as a consultant on Frozen to make sure that the runes that they show in the background are accurate, even though they never speak Icelandic or Norse in the movie. That attention to detail where there's runes that show up in those movies. He's the consultant they used to make sure they were using the correct runes.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know about the new translations for the Eddas. I've got the the ones have been out for decades. Is it Lee Hollander or Lee somebody like that did the the ones I've got. But I'll check those out. And
I think he may have also done one of the sagas as well at this point.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
I've never seen Frozen.
There we go.
I just wanted to mention.
Let it go, yep. Carl. Let it go.
Yeah, it's okay, Carl. nobody's going to take your man.
I've heard those damn songs though. All right.
That's right. So, guys, thank you so much for answering these listener calls with me. I really appreciate it. And everybody will be back next week with a regular episode. And so keep those calls coming in. We love your comments, and we'll play them on the air and give our feedback. So,
is next week our first episode on madness and sanity?
Yeah, it is. Yep. So, okay, everybody, we'll talk to you later. Take care.
A Nerd Central broadcast, Cerebrivore podcast. Let's savor all the flavors from the Simon Strong. What I mean is this machine's a freak, and from what I understand, it has an evil. Don't look now, the Super Bowl is coming, and all that's left is the crying and the running. You can bring it, you can pile, you can bomb in any order. Just another ring of people tossers running for the border. Just a snack like a one, can I stutter? Beer and beer. It's bread and butter, you can eat on a biggie, and it's just never say it. It's savory, the flavor of the movies it created.